Yes, thank you, John. I'm here with Sylvia Smith. She's from Littleton, and she is a freelance journalist who's written about the healthcare industry. She has a question about healthcare.
Yes, as a journalist who's written frequently about healthcare and medicine for both newspapers and for corporate publications, I'm very concerned about the overreach of the massive healthcare legislation that was passed last year. My question is, what would each candidate do? What 3 steps would they take to defund Obamacare and repeal it as soon as possible? Thank you.
Congresswoman Bachmann, let's start with you on that.
Thank you, John. Sylvia, thank you for that great question. I was the very first member of Congress to introduce the full-scale repeal of Obamacare. And I want to make a promise to everyone watching tonight. As President of the United States, I will not rest until I repeal Obamacare. It's a promise. Take it to the bank, cash the check. I'll make sure that that happens. This is the symbol and the signature issue of President Obama during his entire tenure. And this is a job killer, Sylvia. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has said that Obamacare will kill 800,000 jobs. What could the president be thinking by passing a bill like this, knowing full well it will kill 800,000 jobs? Senior citizens get this more than any other segment of our population because they know in Obamacare, the President of the United States took away $500 billion, $500 billion out of Medicare, shifted it to Obamacare to pay for younger people, and it's senior citizens who have the most to lose in Obamacare.
Governor Romney, just yesterday, Governor Pawlenty, who is to your left on the stage tonight, called your Massachusetts plan, which you know has become a focal point of the criticism in this campaign from your friends here, Obamacare. Obamacare. Is that a fair comparison?
You know, let me say a couple things. First, if I'm elected president, I will repeal Obamacare, just as Michele indicated. And also, on my first day in office, if I'm lucky enough to have that office, I will grant a waiver to all 50 states from Obamacare. Now, there's some similarities and there's some big differences. Obamacare spends $1 trillion. If it were perfect, and it's not perfect, it's terrible, we can't afford more federal spending. Secondly, it raises $500 billion in taxes. We didn't raise taxes in Massachusetts. Third, Obamacare takes $500 billion out of Medicare and funds Obamacare. We, of course, didn't do that. And finally, ours was a state plan, a state solution, and if people don't like it in our state, they can change it. That's the nature of why states are the right place for this type of responsibility. And that's why I introduced a plan to repeal Obamacare and replace it with a state-centric program.
Governor, you just heard the governor rebut your characterization, Obamacare. Why?
Let me first say to Sylvia, she has put her finger on one of the most important issues facing the country, which is President Obama stood before the nation in 2008 and said he promised to do health care reform focused on cost containment, along with Republicans. He'd do it on a bipartisan basis.
The question, Governor, was why Obamacare?
That's right. Well, I'm going to get to that, John.
You have 30 seconds, Governor.
Yeah, so this is another example of him breaking his promise, and he has to be held accountable. And in order to prosecute the case against President Obama, you have to be able to show that you've got a better plan and a different plan. We took a different approach in Minnesota. We didn't use top-down government mandates and individual requirements from government. We created market alternatives and empowered consumers. I think that's the way to fix health care in the United States of America.
And you don't want to address why you called Governor Romney's Obamacare?
Well, the issue that was raised in a question from a reporter was, what are the similarities between the two? And I just cited President Obama's own words that he looked to Massachusetts as a blueprint or a guide when he designed Obamacare.
But you chose, you say you asked a question, which is fair enough, but you chose those words. And so one of my questions is, why would you choose those words, maybe in the comfort of a Sunday show studio? Your rival is standing right there. If it was Obamacare on Fox News Sunday, why is it not Obamacare standing here with the governor right there?
President Obama is the person who I quoted in saying he looked to Massachusetts for designing his program. He's the one who said it's a blueprint in that he merged the two programs. And so using the term Obamacare was a reflection of the president's comments that he designed Obamacare on the Massachusetts health care plan.
Governor, you want to respond to that at all?
No, just to say this, which is, my guess is the president is going to eat those words and wish he hadn't put them out there. And I can't wait to debate him and say, Mr. President, if in fact you did look at what we did in Massachusetts, why didn't you give me a call and ask what worked and what didn't, and I would have told you, Mr. President, that what you're doing will not work. It's a huge power grab by the federal government. It's going to be massively expensive, raising taxes, cutting Medicare. It's wrong for America, and that's why there's an outpouring across the nation to say no to Obamacare. And I'm delighted to be able to debate him on that.
Mr. Speaker, you have, I'll let you. Mr. Speaker, you have at times said, you know, maybe you do have to consider a mandate. You've been very open to the individual mandate. It has become, it seems, at least at the moment, a litmus test in this Republican primary. Should it be?
Yes, it should be. If you explore the mandate, which even the Heritage Foundation at one time looked at, the fact is when you get into a mandate, it ultimately ends up with unconstitutional powers. It allows the government to define virtually everything, and if you can do it for health care, you can do it for everything in your life, and therefore we should not have a mandate. But I want to answer Sylvia at a different level. This campaign cannot be only about the presidency. We need to pick up at least 12 seats in the U.S. Senate and 30 or 40 more seats in the House, because if you are serious about repealing Obamacare, you have to be serious about building a big enough majority in the legislative branch that you could actually, in the first 90 days, pass the legislation. So I just think it's very important to understand, it's not about what one person in America does, it's about what the American people do, and that requires a senatorial majority as well as a presidency.
All right, we'll have more time to discuss the health care issue. Let's get down to the floor. Jennifer Vaughn from WMUR has a question from a voter.
Hi, John. Thank you very much. I'd like you to meet Terry Poff tonight. Tell me I said that last name correctly, Terry. Granite State or born and bred?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here. And what's your question for the candidates tonight?
Well, my question is that I am a New Hampshire native, and I've been an active Republican for years, from a town committee chairman, Republican chairman, Merrimack County, vice chairman, all the way up to a 2004 delegate for President Bush. My question is, how will you convince myself? I'm not a libertarian Republican. I'm not a Tea Party Republican. I'm just a mainstream Republican. And we need both the independents and mainstream Republicans to win in November. How can you convince me and assure me that you'll bring a balance and you won't be torn to one side or the other from any faction within the party? You have to have a balanced approach to governing to solve our serious problems.
Senator Santorum, let me let you go first on that one.
Well, if you look at my record, I'm someone who's actually accomplished a lot on big issues. Take, for example, welfare reform. I was in the United States Senate, and actually at the direction of Newt Gingrich, I was on the Ways and Means Committee, and I drafted the Contract with America welfare reform bill. It was considered this extreme measure. Well, that extreme measure, we ended up winning an election and getting those seats, and that was now the starting point. And I managed that bill in the United States Senate because I cared about the dignity of every person. I didn't believe that poverty was the ultimate disability. I believed that people could work and they could succeed. And we brought people together. I got 70 votes to end a federal entitlement. To end a federal entitlement, which was what Paul Ryan's proposed for Medicaid. He's proposed for food stamps. He's proposed for other welfare programs. We did it. We set the template, and I led and got bipartisan support to do it.
Can I ask you quickly, that wasn't addressed part of the question, but are you concerned at all about the influence of the Tea Party?
Not at all. I think the Tea Party is a great, great backstop for America. I love it when people hold up this Constitution and say we have to live by what our founders laid out for this country. It is absolutely essential that we have that backbone to the Republican Party going into this election.
I know you agree, Congresswoman, so help the gentleman. Address his concerns that the Tea Party somehow, the influence of the Tea Party somehow pushes him out.
Terry, what I've seen in the Tea Party, I'm the chairman of the Tea Party caucus in the House of Representatives, and what I've seen is, unlike how the media has tried to wrongly and grossly portray the Tea Party is really made up of disaffected Democrats, independents, people who've never been political a day in their life, people who are libertarians, Republicans. It's a wide swath of America coming together. I think that's why the left fears it so much, because they're people who simply want to take the country back. They want the country to work again. And I think there's no question, Terry, this election will be about economics. It will be about how will we create jobs, how will we turn the economy around, how will we have a pro-growth economy. That's a great story for Republicans to tell. President Obama can't tell that story. His report card right now has a big failing grade on it, but Republicans have an awesome story to tell. We need every one of us in a three-legged stool. We need the peace through strength Republicans, we need the fiscal conservatives, we need the social conservatives, we need everybody to come together because we're going to win. Just make no mistake about it. I want to announce tonight, President Obama is a one-term president. We'll win.
I'm being polite so far, but I want to remind everybody about the time. Mr. Cain, as somebody who has no elective experience,
yes.
This gentleman's question, if you were to become the nominee of this party,
yes.
and you associate yourself with the Tea Party, politics is about math. It's about coalition building. And a candidate who loses a mainstream Republican, as he describes himself, might not win this state in November, might not win a big state like Senator Santorum's Pennsylvania in November. Address the concern of the gentleman who seems to think that at least some people in the Tea Party, maybe in their dissatisfaction, their anger at the president, are too negative, too critical.
They're not too negative, they're not too critical. As a businessman, one of the first things that you do, which has allowed me to be successful throughout my career, is make sure you're working on the right problem. If we make sure we're working on the right problem, I will surround myself with the right people, and then we will put together the right plans that I'm going to take it to the people. I will be a president to do what's right, not what's politically right. And so if the other party disagrees, but the American people embrace those common sense solutions, that's how we get things done. So those experiences in the business world, managing large organizations with a very diverse constituency of the same skills that can help get the people involved and not exclude the people like this administration has done.
All right, I want to remind the candidates know this. I remind people in the audience, CNN is hosting a Tea Party debate September 12th to watch how this plays out. The Tea Party was vocal in 2010. We'll see how much the influence is in 2012. Well, let's continue our conversation here with the voters of New Hampshire. Gene Mackin of WMUR is in Hancock with a voter and a question. Gene?